In retrospect, I can see that I felt that, our cultural history could inform our commercial or everyday reality more. And that was pretty much what I was fighting for and crusading for, along with many others. I think the design profession in general was trying to sort of push for that right through until, the current era. And it's during the current era that, in a way, the cultural canon has become entirely, as I said, integrated, but now appropriated for the purposes of commercial practice. And that's where there's in a way, a disconnect. And it then begins to become rather upsetting when you begin to realize that we're now selling out the culture for the purposes of marketing. And that's the thing which I've not wanted to really partake in. And that's something which I find is, just below the surface, a kind of wave of disillusion across the creative profession. So when you were fighting the marketing men, saying, look, there is a better way of doing this, it kind of felt worthwhile. But when the marketing people sit there and say, how do we seduce? And, how do we position? How do we make our product or service or company look as if it believes in something, when actually it doesn't? That's the problem.
So what is the challenge affecting communication designers today?
I think the toughest thing really is maintaining some sense of integrity in the work that they're doing, and being able to hold on to some belief in the value of it for themselves. The creative industries generally are vocational occupations, and they're not enormously well remunerated. There are, some people do very well out of it, but for many it's not, it's not a vast amount of money. Being a lawyer would have been better. But in principle, you're doing something that you believe in, that you love, and that you care for. And that's, in a way, the compensation sometimes for less income. And if you lose the sense of value, and you lose that sense of commitment and interest in the work, then the inventiveness, goes with it. If you didn't want to work for a petroleum company, there was always the escape route of a gallery or museum or the public sector, a hospital or a school to work for. But we've seen a situation over the last decade where all of those organisations, and the public sector itself in particular, has had to become more business-facing. A hospital has to be profitable now. A school has to be profitable. Galleries and museums have to be profitable. So the strategies of marketing are just as likely or just as prevalent at the Barbican as they are at BP. There's an awful lot to learn within the 3 or 4 year period of design education. There's just as much to learn now as there was before, but then there's some more to learn. Business studies have come into design education, but mainly in the role of being able to support the individual, the self-employed person. So they've studied design in one form or another, and then they're very likely to be working freelance or independently or part-time, and so therefore they've needed to acquire some business skills in order just to to operate. I think the business context in which design operates or lives, that is maybe the next level of education and information that might be required, and that is a constantly shifting relationship and a constantly shifting scenario. And it's very difficult for the academic system, which is predominantly outside of current business practice in television, current business practice in fashion, current business practice in the airline industry, etc., etc. It's outside of business practice. It's very difficult for them to know, within the academic body themselves, how best to prepare the students for the environment that they're going into. I think it's never too young to know what you care about or even just to start to think, what is it that I care about? Because sometimes we see jobs or occupations or professions which appear to be what we're interested in, but they might not fully reward what we care about. And I think that there's nothing worse than being faced with 20 or 30 or 40 years of your life caught up in something that you don't care about. And I think that's the one thing that somebody starting out in any profession, but specifically the design profession, that they can begin to ask themselves that question. They might not come up with the answer, but just beginning to ask themselves, what is it that they actually care about?